And welcome to the second podcast we've ran this week with senior leaders of the council team, where we are trying to communicate to residents as much information as possible how the council are trying to support our community through this lockdown and through the difficult, big, challenging period that we're all going through at the moment. I'm delighted today to be joined by Amanda Starr, our Strategic Housing and Inclusion Manager. I think I've got that correct.
A bit long.
And I'm also delighted to have with us today Gemma Coward, who's our Housing Options Team Leader. Both doing a fantastic job in supporting the community, and particularly around vulnerable people, homeless people, those suffering from domestic abuse. And we'll try and uncover during this podcast some of the support we're offering to all of those groups. Amanda, would you just give me a brief overview for the benefit of everybody watching, just what your department is about in the council and the broad areas that you cover?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So my team covers housing and social inclusion, and housing breaks down into several different sections actually. So people ourselves council. So housing options is part of that, and within housing options sits homelessness. So people that are either faced with potential homelessness or actually have nowhere to stay that night. And that's what Gemma's going to talk to us about in a minute. But within my team also, we cover quite a broad range of other things. So we also deal with empty properties, and we deal with disabled facilities grants, aids and adaptations for disabled people. And that's something I want to talk to you about today, Mike, after Gemma's explain what we're doing around homelessness.
Great, thanks. Sorry, Amanda, go on.
Just going to say the other bit of my role is about social inclusion. So that's all about resilient communities and help for people during lockdown. So I'd like to say a little bit about that while we're on the podcast today too.
Excellent, and I think we're going to have somebody from that team come on a future podcast as well. So we'll be able to get into more detail on that. Gemma, we've been through this lockdown process earlier in the year, back in March, where there was huge demands on your department. Is this lockdown any different from the previous lockdown in relation to housing and homelessness?
Firstly, I don't envisage the demand being any higher than it was in April, but we've still managed to retain beds across bed and breakfast throughout Copeland. We've got 8 units of accommodation at the moment, and having these extra bed and breakfast retained beds is just a bit of a security blanket for us, giving us direct access to accommodation if we needed. In the first lockdown, the concerns are more around move on and potential bottlenecking of the temporary accommodation, but I don't visualise this happening again. Housing associations are still advertising properties and they're still letting properties out, but we are really prioritising the move on from temporary accommodation into longer term sustainable accommodation. The support that you can get during lockdown, so lockdown 2, we're here again, so we're currently preparing for the winter months ahead, and we ask people who are homeless or threatened with homelessness to contact the council's main number. We are a 24-hour service, so if it's an emergency out of hours call, you can call the council's main number and get in touch that way. We offer advice and assistance to those who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. For example, whether it be you've received a notice from your landlord or that you've been asked to leave the current home. We work with clients to prevent them leaving the home, so by offering assistance with arrears and negotiating or mediating with landlords to help them remain in that current property. But if they've already lost their previous accommodation and they do find themselves homeless, we'll work with them to find alternative accommodation as well that is affordable and suitable for their needs by offering financial incentives such as rent in advance, rent deposits, and tenancy support if needed to help that tenancy become sustainable. We've got 8 units currently of dispersed accommodation, self-contained throughout Copeland, which is suitable for singles and families. And if you are made homeless, we have access into that accommodation, and we use B&B as overspill.
So, anyone with the threat of homelessness around them, what advice, what should they do?
If you're a professional that's watching today, you can do a duty to refer. So if you're working with anybody that you would know of who's due to lose their home, might have a notice, or they are homeless, please get in touch with us. The council's website, copeland.gov.uk, and the link is on there. They can self-refer using that link as well, and the information goes right into our back office system, and my staff will contact them within 48 hours.
So what would some of the reasons for homelessness be, Gemma, generally, and in particular during the lockdown period?
The main reason that we've had presentations from since April has been family and friends are not able to accommodate, which fits in with my grandma's shielding. I can't live with her anymore, or the sofa that I was staying on, I can't no longer stay there. So we've had a lot of single males predominantly come forward saying that they can't stay on the friend's sofa anymore, and that's what we call the hidden homeless. So we've been working with them to try and find suitable longer term accommodation for everybody that comes forward.
And how would people in this, if you're homeless or about to become homeless, possibly don't have access to the internet, how do they contact us to support them? And are we confident we've got robust processes in place to identify people who could potentially fall into homelessness?
Yeah, so you can just contact the council's main number, and we do have a direct number that comes right the way through to our housing options team, which is 01946 427 070. That's during office hours. Our market hall offices are actually closed at the moment, so we are trying to do everything over the telephone channel or email channel. But if you do find yourself, you can go to any professional place that is open, and they will do the duty refer on your behalf.
And we've focused a lot, and I know you've been particularly involved in some of the media campaigns we've done around supporting victims of domestic abuse. Is the lockdown causing this to spike, or is it pretty much staying on a level? And what support are we offering to people who should find themselves in that situation?
Yeah, so the council's got a specialist role that sits within the housing options team who supports victims that has been made homeless as a result of domestic abuse. And the officer works intensively with victims, providing support and signposting to other providers to provide an holistic approach. 3 out of our temporary accommodations out of them 8 that I mentioned previously are houses that have been expertly designed with security measures. They've been target hardened to ensure victims and families feel safe. And the one thing I do want to say is, if you are suffering with domestic abuse and you want to leave the perpetrator, please contact us, because there is a bit of a perception that you will be placed in a refuge out the area. But our units are in Copeland, and we're safe to do so. We will work with you to remain in that area. In the beginning of the pandemic, the presentations for domestic abuse were really low, which was quite concerning. The officer that we've got in position that should raise the profile of the role, reached out to different partners to promote the role. The government also announced that they were using chemists as safe spaces to go. So they were contacted, given Copeland's number and leaflets that our officers got to promote that role further. So since April, it has slightly increased, although it's not a significant increase. We've assisted 22 victims, including 13 children that have broken away from an abusive relationship and supported into longer term tenancies.
That's great. Amanda, is there anything you would like to add to Gemma's comments before we move on to disabled facilities grants?
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on the point about how people access us, and I don't want people to be put off because the market hall isn't open to the public at the moment. And there are lots of ways to contact us, and Gemma's covered them really. But just to reinforce that we are obliged and do happily provide access to services 24 hours a day for people that have nowhere to stay that night. So if you find yourself roofless, you literally have nowhere to stay, you know, 365 days a year, we have people on call that will be able to help with that. If it's not an emergency, we ask to wait till the next working day. But if it is, we do have provision for that, and they just need to ring the council's main number. You don't need to worry about remembering other numbers or go online. Phone the council's main switchboard number, and you just press 1, and that will divert you through to whoever's on call to support you.
Good, that's important. Disabled facilities grants, Amanda, you wanted to make sure we got some communication out around the DFGs.
Yeah, I did. So what we're really talking about in this session today is the council's statutory duties. So homelessness is a big area for us as a council, and the other areas supporting disabled people and through vulnerability might need assistance to stay safe in their own homes. So disabled facilities grants, I feel that it's reduced a little bit in the take up that we've seen since COVID started, really. And I've just been looking at some statistics that I've dug out. So commonly any year we do about 150, and DFGs cover things like stair lifts, wet floor showers, ramps so that people can get in and out of properties, widening doors inside properties, and sometimes extensions for people that perhaps are severely disabled and might need hoists and special facilities downstairs. So it's really, really important that this service is maintained. And what we've seen is there's probably about a third less applications coming through in the time since lockdown. And I just wanted people to be aware that contractors and supply chains are still running. It's different really to last lockdown when we did find that some of our contractors have furloughed staff, you know, the specialist workmen that you might need to carry out these adaptations. And sometimes you need specialist equipment or parts that may have been affected by the supply chain, you know, nationally across the country. But that's not really what we're seeing this time. As Gemma said, housing associations are still operating, still letting properties, and similarly, contractors are still carrying out adaptations for us. So it's important because if you think about a stair lift, one of the main risk factors that we know for people that as they're getting older is falls. And fall down the stairs can put somebody in hospital for a long time and potentially into residential care. So knowing that somebody is at risk and getting help in advance of anything critical happening, let's not deal with the crisis, let's try and do preventative work. And that's where aids and adaptations are. So what I would say is, if you or anybody in your family, neighbours, friends are perhaps frail, it might be that they're elderly, it might be they're disabled, it might just be they're suffering from another medical condition, which means they're struggling to get about at home. And if they're at risk because of that, and they can't use say the bathroom or the kitchen properly, they can't get upstairs easily, that's when a disabled facilities grant would come in. And the first step is for them to contact the occupational therapy team. I've got a number, Mike. Do you want me to give that out, and we can probably put it on a link? Yeah. Okay, so the process would be that the occupational therapist will carry out an assessment of that person's needs. Okay, so their phone number is 0300 303 3589. And because they're the specialists in understanding how people, you know, need to move about and use the stairs and the shower in their own home, they do that assessment, and then if there's a need, they'll refer it through to us. And that's where we come in, because we actually do the work, project manage the work around a disabled adaptation.
Okay, that's really helpful. Amanda, you know, a lot of people think now, you know, with the COVID pandemic, what's the process around security, COVID security? You know, a lot of people, you know, are clearly, you know, going to worry about the virus spreading, and either as a spreader of the virus or someone who could potentially pick the virus up. What COVID security measures does your team have in place?
That's a really important point, actually, because I think one of the main reasons why people haven't come forward to have disabled facilities grants, assessments done or work done is because they're nervous because of COVID about having people coming into their homes. So, you know, if you're a person that's already perhaps got a medical condition, you know, you're going to be doubly nervous about inviting somebody in, even if you think you do need a stair lift or another adaptation. We've done a lot of work. We've worked really closely with Adult Social Care, County Council and the Occupational Therapy Department to agree a protocol between us around how it will be managed. And so there's very safe measures, so COVID safe practices in place. So for instance, what we'll be doing is we always ring people to check if they're happy for somebody to visit them at home. And we talk to them about our staff not having any symptoms and, you know, reassuring them, but also about their symptoms. So we wouldn't go and we wouldn't send anyone if there was any signs at all of COVID. Also, what we do is we only go inside if we need to, and we would ask the person to stay in another room so that transmission close proximity is managed, you know, fully kitted up with PPE. PPE is not a problem. We've got all that now. That's absolutely well supplied. So it would all be really closely managed. And the important well is it's not just us or the occupational therapists, it's actually the contractors that will be coming into work in people's homes. So they've also been asked to sign up to a protocol, a set of rules around how they're going to behave to make sure that we're all COVID safe and protected.
So there's really no need for anybody to be put off getting things that's available to them for worry about COVID. That's the, you know, the clear message that's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just in the DFG team. So for instance, Gemma talked about the temporary accommodation. We have our own temporary accommodation, which Gemma mentioned. Some of those are special domestic abuse support units, but there's also a range of flats and houses pepper potted across Copeland that we use. Now, we obviously need to have staff to go in and check those units and make sure they're safe for people to go, fully stocked, etc. And similarly, staff that are out and about in properties or with customers for other reasons across the board, whether it's my team or say environmental health, different teams, are fully kitted out with PPE, and we're all following really stringent processes.
Good, great to hear. Just generally, is there any specific, you know, this is one for either one of you to pick up on. Is there any specific lockdown support that we've got in place that you know is relevant just to the lockdown period?
Yeah, so well, I wanted to pick up on that actually because we have some information on the website which is available for people to read. I would like to show people where it is actually, if that's okay, Mike, and then I'll talk it through. Yeah, so I'm going to have a go at this. Is exciting.
If you've got Amanda, then please do.
Let me see if I can do this.
If you're relying on me to help you to do that, then
no, I'm going to try and do this myself. We're all learning. So I'm going to try and share this screen, so hopefully you'll be able to see it. So what I'm going to share is
this is a podcast first, Amanda.
Podcast first. I thought it'd be interesting for people to see how they get onto it. So I'm going to share this now. You should be able to see that screen.
Can
you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. So when somebody clicks on to Copeland, you're going to see this page. Okay. Let me show you the first page. That's the first page that you land on. See copeland.gov.uk. When you put in Copeland Borough Council into Google and click on it, this is the page that you're going to see. And what you want to do is just click this green. You don't need to scroll down or read anything else. Just click that there. All the latest coronavirus information and support for residents and businesses. This covers everything that a lot of our podcasts are talking about. And it'll take you to this page. Now, this is where all the information is. And if it's about support for residents, just come under this section, support for residents. And this talks to you here about all the support that's available. So it's quite easy to find. What I would draw your attention to is this phone number here. Okay, so 0800 783 1966. Now I'm just going to unshare this and I'll talk to you about what the support available is. So we should be going back to seeing Mike and Gemma on the screen. Can you see me again, Mike and Gemma?
Yes, we can, yeah.
That works, that's great. Super, okay, thank you.
That's
so
really helpful, Amanda. You know,
it's quite easy to get to, and I think people think, oh, I'm going to have to click on a lot of things, but it's really simple. So hopefully that'll be really helpful for people. So first of all, shielding. Now there are about 3,190, just under 3,200 people in Copeland that are registered as clinically extremely vulnerable, what we call shielding. These people are identified by the NHS and GPs, and they are the people that are most at risk. So people who are shielding will be receiving, they should have received it already, a letter from the government explaining what support's out there for them. Now, the first time, you might remember, they did national food boxes for people that were shielding. People automatically got them, yeah? And when lockdown ended the first time, people were transitioned, so supported and encouraged to set up delivery slots with existing supermarkets. Now, if people have got those delivery slots already, don't need to do anything. They will just continue as normal, just carry on using them. But not everybody did. And also there are new people on the shielding list that perhaps have become poorly, you know, in between times. So for anybody who hasn't got that set up already, there is a website. The link is on our website that I've just shown you, and it's also in the letter that you've had from the government to be able to set up those delivery slots. You, your friends, your family can do it. Now, if you can't do that, if you don't have any access to digital, it's okay. You need to phone that number that I just quoted. So the 0800 number that we just quoted, which is on our website and is being quite widely published. We'll make sure that there's a link, if we can, to that so people can get there. And the staff there will help people to set up delivery slots for supermarkets, help with things like prescriptions, community pharmacists circulating prescriptions. So, of course, there are a lot of people that aren't perhaps on the shielding list, but are still vulnerable. They might be medically vulnerable, they might be disabled, they might be self-isolating and unable to get help. So the number is still applicable for them. So it's the 0800 number, yeah? And if they can contact that number, and they will be able to get support. Now, sometimes they will refer to us or to a community group, depending what it is. So if it was somebody that had a housing issue, it would come through to Gemma. Sometimes people need help and support, say, I don't know, things like dog walking, things like that. That can be helped by community COVID groups. And one thing that we've done at Copeland is we've phoned all the COVID community groups that were operating in lockdown 1. And much to our amazement, because we have absolutely fantastic communities in Copeland, the majority of them are up and running again. Some of them never went away, actually, but the majority are up and running again. Now, what we do have as well on our website is a link to a directory of support groups that can assist. So people that perhaps don't need help but want to self-refer, might be capable themselves of making that call, of, you know, going online and doing it. That directory is a great resource, and again, the link's on our website. The last thing I would say is people that are perhaps not medically vulnerable, but what we might call financially vulnerable, so experiencing hardship, struggling with money, household budgeting, food, finances, that kind of thing. There's a lot of help around there as well. So we've got the Thrift Hub in Copeland, which is about access to food and also financial support, so that we can help people don't have to be reliant on food banks and other sources. We can help them to become sustainable, manage budgets better, deal with debt, get all the benefits checked, that kind of thing. And all of that will be listed on our website as well. But I think we've got another podcast coming up which is specifically about that, because there's absolutely loads of support for families and elderly people, individuals, everybody out there that people can access that help them through COVID and generally. And I think we're doing another podcast on that one, aren't we, Mike?
We are. Yourself and I and Emma Williamson from your team and a couple of the third-party agencies.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, a couple of our voluntary groups going to come and join us.
We can cover a lot of those points in more detail. Gemma, is there any sort of final points you wish to make, or have we covered as much as we need to on housing for now?
Yeah, just the demand levels, really. I just wanted to give a bit of an overview and a picture of the demand over the last 7 months. So we've accommodated 67 individuals since April, which has increased by 252% compared to the same quarters last year. And we have housed 44 of those into successful move on longer term accommodation, whether that be supported accommodation, private or social. And one thing I wanted to touch on was rough sleepers. We don't have a high volume of rough sleepers in the area of Copeland, and that boils down to the preventative work my amazing team do. We've had a rough sleeper count, an annual rough sleeper count that's just taken place. It's a snapshot, and it's a one night in October and November that the government asks every local authority to do. And we work with local partners such as the police and other services to gather evidence of any rough sleepers in the area. Copeland's submission was zero, and this just shows how hard my team work to prevent people sleeping on the streets. And I just want to thank them. They're absolutely shining stars, and we couldn't do our job as well without the team I have. So thank you, team.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Gemma. I think even with this podcast today, we've just seen another real example of how Copeland staff are absolutely committed to helping people get through these difficult times in the best way possible. So, I really appreciate you both joining me. And anybody watching this podcast today, it's going to be published on several Facebook pages. So please, if there's any questions that you feel that we haven't covered, we are all watching the responses, and we will get back to people and make sure to get the answers to any sort of questions or queries they want to put to us. And what I would do as well is I would urge everybody who's tuning in and watching the podcast to make sure that you share it and if possible, make it available to people who this could directly help. It can make a real difference. We talked a little bit about domestic abuse and people living with different kinds of abuse. We can help people to the point where we can be saving lives, and that's already, we've already got experience of that. I know that you've been certainly involved in pretty closely, Gemma. So I would urge everybody to share the podcast far and wide, and make sure that those who need the information that we're trying to impart get access to it. Amanda, you will be joining me again on the next podcast, and we'll talk more in the detail about some of the financial issues and support that we can get to our residents. And Gemma, thank you very much for taking time to join us again today, and incredibly helpful, and for both of you, pass on my thanks to the rest of the team on behalf of the whole of the community for the great work that you continue to keep on doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.